You're listening to Health Coach Conversations, a podcast where our conversations help health coaches all around the world to level up our businesses and to get more clients. Hello and welcome. I am Cathy Sykora, founder of the Health Coach Group and host of Health Coach Conversations. I am interviewing Epiphany Jordan today. She is MPH, CPH for her initials, is on a mission to rebrand human touch. From 2013 to 2020, she provided platonic touch therapy in a ritualized setting with her business, the Austin-based Karuna Sessions. She is also the author of Somebody Hold Me, the Single Person's Guide to Nurturing Human Touch. Somebody Hold Me addresses the touch deficit singles face and offers multiple solutions. She has appeared on several podcasts discussing human touch and spoke about solving loneliness with human touch at Austin's SXSW Interactive Festival in 2019. In 2023, she completed her Master of Public Health with a concentration in social marketing from the University of South Florida and researched rebranding human touch as a part of her program. She's been a journalist, a legal assistant, an event planner, a professional tarot reader, an advice columnist, a cigarette girl, and a gig economy surf. Today, we will be talking about rebranding human touch. You have an interesting background, girl.
I do. By the way, I don't know if I can't remember if I told you this or not, but as part of my MPH, I was able to get certified as a health and wellness coach. I haven't been practicing that much, but my thing that I want to specialize in, or that I've been doing a little bit of coaching with people around, is how to get more touch in their lives, because it's people are like, I know I need it, but I don't know how to get it. So anyways, that might be.
Without hanging out at bars, right?
Well, I mean, that doesn't necessarily, that might get you some crappy hookup sex, but that's not necessarily tender and kind and
what you need.
Yeah. Although a lot of people do that, do hookup sex to get touch. That's not uncommon. Yeah.
Okay, so why do you think that human touch needs a rebrand?
Because the way that we think about it now is not working for most of us. It's, most of us equate touch with sex or with caregiving or bad experiences. And that leaves a lot of people out of the equation. And it also kind of narrows down why we touch other people. If we're only touching each other for sexual arousal, then we don't have touch when we need comfort, when we're grieving, or we need to relax when we're stressed, or we need respite when we're overworked with caregiving, or soothing when we're traumatized. So, I think by rebranding, we can, a lot more people can access it.
I was thinking about this. Different people react to touch differently too. I think about a time I took my mom to the dentist to have some work done, and she was nervous about it. And I thought it was so nice. The dental hygienist was, patting her on the shoulder, calming her down. And we left, and I said, I thought that dental hygienist was so nice. And she said, I couldn't stand her touching me.
Oh, that's too bad. I wonder if it would have helped if you had held her hand instead, because you're somebody that she knows and trusts.
No, you know what? I probably would have irritated her as bad as the.
Oh,
I think people.
She's just not a dentist person, huh?
Yeah, she's not a dentist person. That's right.
I mean, I think a lot of people can say that, but yeah.
Yeah, I've held her hand at different times at the hospital, or different times that she's appreciated. But maybe they just don't like it maybe sometimes people don't like it when they're nervous to be touched. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. Maybe it's somebody that they don't know.
I mean, there's so many ways to think about it and look at it, and it can depend on, there's all these factors that go into it around our upbringing and, what we think what touch means to us. But yeah, a lot of it too is situational. It's, who's touching you, why they're touching you, all these different things. And it changes from moment to moment. I mean, that's one of the things that I find that people tend to find tricky about the concepts of boundaries and consent, which is
Yeah, that's the
very
other thing.
important when it comes to touch. So,
Branding is a concept that we usually apply to businesses. Can you give me some examples of other rebrands of cultural ideas?
yeah, it's something that I've thought about a lot as well. I think one of the, it's like we always think that, our ideas around concepts or, these kind of social cultural things are fixed. I think one of the best ones maybe that people could relate to is marriage. For a long time, for a lot of human history, marriage was something that was about, it was a business contract. I'll give you my daughter if you give me 10 cows. That,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, right? And then, at some point it switched to being about love. In the 50s, it was kind of a concept of, when you put two people together in marriage, you get a whole person. The man's out in the world working and earning money, and the woman's in the home taking care of the home and raising the children and focusing on relationships. And these days, marriage for a lot of people has been kind of rethought of as a vehicle for personal growth, that being married is an opportunity to become a better person, to work on yourself. And I should have said up front, branding is this business concept that's around how, how a brand presents itself. I mean, if you think of like cars, for instance, like, if you think about like a Volkswagen versus a Subaru, it's like you get a very different picture of like who's driving it and where they're going and what they do with their car. But it's also this idea of how people think about a particular brand. And like I said, with marriage, it's like it's something that people have that has really changed over the years. So none of this is fixed. Another one that I think of is death. It used to be, for thousands and thousands of years, somebody would die in their home, and, you would lay the body out and the family members would wash it and build a casket and, wrap the body and put it in, dig a hole and put it in the ground. And now it's like we've kind of outsourced that, and we don't have, where we don't have a very intimate relationship with death. People die in hospitals a lot of times, and they go to the mortuary, and maybe you have an open casket or maybe not, and maybe you just get this box of ashes that used to be your person back to you. So that, yeah, that's a couple of concepts where I think the idea of what it means to people at large has changed. And I think there's a lot of concepts that are in flux right now.
Oh, you know what? The pandemic changed a lot of that.
Absolutely.
People died and you didn't even have memorials for them because you couldn't get together.
Yeah.
Or
And it
else
was
if you
really
got
hard.
together, you were scared to death. Everybody
Yeah.
else there. Okay, when you were in school, you had a project designed to rebrand Human Touch. How did you go about doing that?
So my faculty advisor challenged me to do it because I had written on my statement of purpose for graduate school that human touch had a branding problem. And the program I was doing was kind of a hybrid of public health and marketing. So she was like, how would you go about redoing it? What does this rebrand look like? So she had me research different branding frameworks. And the one that I came up with was, or that kind of seemed like it would work, was storytelling and brand archetypes. If you tell a story in a familiar structure, that humans have been telling stories in this structure for thousands of years, and then archetypes are familiar characters. So if you do that, if you have a familiar story with familiar archetypes, then it makes it easier for people to grasp what might be a new concept to them. And so I ended up, my target audience that I decided to focus on was middle-aged women who were single and heterosexual, who still wanted to be in a romantic relationship, and they were struggling with meeting people, which, I mean, I know that that is not relegated to middle-aged women. I mean, people of all ages who are single or struggling with trying to meet people and connect with people. But I thought that that was a group that might be open to receiving touch in different ways. So I wrote 3 different stories about how people would get touch, like 3 different ways they could get touch and 3 different ways that they found out about it. And so I read them these stories and asked for their feedback on it. And we also talked a lot about touch's current, the stories in our culture that we currently talk about when we think and talk about touch. And got some pretty interesting information out of it.
Starting a wellness business can be daunting, but not with the Health Coach Group. From business strategies to consistent income streams, we've got you covered. Let's create a thriving practice together. Visit thehealthcoachgroup.com to learn more.
Okay, we have most of our listeners are health coaches and doctors and nutritionists, people that work in wellness and lifestyle management. We have a lot of life coaches too.
Okay.
So when we're looking at the rest of the questions, maybe look at it in ways, maybe we could give some ideas on how this information could be helpful to them
Yeah.
in guiding people with lifestyle management. So what are Human Touch's 3 current brand archetypes?
Okay. So the 3 current brand archetypes are Touch's lover, Touch's caregiver, and Touch's villain. Touch's lover is kind of the biggest one, where we think that, the only person that we touch and that we get all of our tender touch from is our romantic partners. And many of us are marrying later. I think 40% of Americans are single, and there's a huge, probably 25%, definitely 25% of certain demographics like haven't had sex in the past year. So the thing is that it's like these places where people would normally access touch aren't available to many of us anymore. And, people are still looking for it. I know that there's a lot of coaching that goes on around dating and relationships and sex and, trying to get more intimacy. And this is not even something that just single people deal with. It's something that people who are in married, committed relationships deal with a lot too. If you're struggling with your relationship and you don't want to have sex, then touch flies out the window as well. I talked to a lot of the people that I ended up interviewing had stories about, oh, my partner would only come in and, try to give me a hug when they were trying to initiate sex. And so, if you don't want to have sex, then
You don't touch.
you're not going to get hugged. And so that's that. The second one is Touch's caregiver. There's huge amounts of research on the importance of touch for neurological development with infants. It's one of the ways that we help, like premature babies are held and cuddled while they're in the ICU to help them, their organs develop faster and they get out of the ICU faster. And so, this is something that parents share with their children. But again, this is another place where the world is changing. We're having fewer and fewer children, or we don't, as our children age, we don't get it. This is something that also really affects elderly people. We used to live in multi-generational households where the grandparents would take care of the young children, and we're not getting that anymore.
We're more global now, so we're not even close to our family.
Yeah, I think the statistic is 20% of Americans live in multi-generational households. Another thing that came up a lot, or that comes up a lot, is that, like, if you're a new mother or you're a caregiver of some sort, you can be touched out, where it's like all the touch you're getting is from people who are like, gimme, 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 I need this, I need that. And so mothers end up getting really burnt out, as do, people in professions like nursing or CNAs, where they're lifting people and changing beds all the time. And, or people who run preschools. So, I mean, we're talking about people who have they have professions that require a lot of caregiving and a lot of touch, but they're also paid very low. It's like our culture does not really value caregiving. We see it as a duty. So a lot of times, touch's caregiver ends up being really selfless and just burnt out because they're just giving and they're not receiving. And then the final one is touch's villain. I think probably most people have had a bad experience of touch. It could be something like you were talking about with your mother, like having a bad time at the dentist. It could be sexual assault. It could be, childhood abuse. It could be, the kind of harassment where, you're getting grabbed on the street, or, fighting with your siblings. I mean, there's so many experiences that we have around touch that are, where the touch is unpleasant and unwanted. And it causes a lot of people to not want touch. There was a survey done. It was actually, the project started before the pandemic, but they did a study, or they surveyed people, and I think it was 40,000 people from 100 countries, and 40% of them said that one of the biggest reasons for lack of touch in the world was non-consensual touch. So that is something that absolutely needs to be taken seriously and taken into account. It's like a lot of times people don't want to be touched for very good reasons.
Since the pandemic, too, I'm shocked when people reach their hand out to shake hands, even, because we stopped doing that. We quit touching each other, as a greeting or then we stayed 6 feet apart. And I
Yeah.
still do that. I still stay 6 feet away from everybody.
During the pandemic was being with people outdoors. And pretty early on, when they figured out it was a respiratory virus, I was like, there was a big article in the New York Times about, is it okay to hug people? And so I started doing it outdoors, wearing a mask where our faces were pointed in different ways so that we weren't breathing in each other's faces. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely a big reset around it. And it was, the lack of touch that people are having or not having was going on long before the pandemic, but the pandemic definitely exacerbated it.
What are the benefits to people if they choose a new brand archetype?
Yeah, so I think the biggest benefit is health. It's like we don't really think about touch. We think about touch in terms of relationships, but we don't really think about it in terms of the overall health benefits of it. It lowers your blood pressure. It counteracts the effects of cortisol in your heart. It reduces inflammation. It speeds wound healing. It reduces appetite. They found that it reduces appetite. It effects of alcohol. It resets your parasympathetic nervous system. It's like, it just makes, if it's wanted touch, it makes your whole body relax. So, I think that thinking about it in terms of the overall health benefits is really important. On a psychological level, it just helps people to feel more connected, to feel less lonely, to feel like they matter, like they're important to other people. And
So
I
are
think,
you saying to give touch a whole new meaning? Don't have it be love, and don't have it be evil. And what were the other two?
oh, caregiving. I,
Caregiving.
I don't think that we have to get rid of the current brand archetypes, but what I
Add health.
what I do think is that we need touch for different reasons at different times of our lives. It's like, I mean, think about like if somebody was married for 30 or 40 years and they got widowed, they're not, maybe they're going to like want to go out and start dating again, but, they may just need comfort, like as a chance to grieve. And so, I think it just is different times in our lives. But I think by expanding our ideas around why we touch other people and what touch is for will make it more accessible and inclusive for more people.
I was just thinking, I talked to somebody this week and she went out on a date for the first time in 10 years. And
Wow.
she said the date was perfect. They had so much in common. They had, everything went perfect until at the very end, when you expect to touch, and she didn't
Uh-huh.
know what to do. She just bye, and
Oh, is she gonna see him again and get another opportunity?
I think so.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, it can be really awkward. I mean,
You
the
forget how to do it.
yeah,
How do
absolutely.
you relearn? How do you, as a health coach or a nurse or whoever it is that's working with somebody, how do you coach somebody to be able to get past that moment and feel more comfortable with it? I guess you have to do it, don't you? Just like speaking and
Yeah.
anything that you feel comfortable with. The more you do it, the more comfortable you are.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. One of my things is really that you have to embrace the awkward. It's like as it's like it's one thing with dating and totally makes sense that your friend after 10 years wouldn't really know what to do, especially if the date went well. I mean, it's like exactly what to do if the date didn't go well. You stick out your hand, hey, nice to meet you, I'll be in touch, and you scurry off as fast as you can. But with a lot of other stuff, I mean, especially if we're thinking about touch that's not going to lead to romance or sex or what have you, it's going to be weird and awkward. And yes, you do have to practice. One of the best things I think that is important for people to learn, like if you're like practicing a little role playing or stuff, is just asking. There's, would you like a hug? 5 words, right? And then stopping and being quiet and letting the other person answer. Or, you could say something, like if you're with a friend, I've had a really bad day. Would you mind holding my hand? Or, I would really appreciate it if we could hold hands or something. And
What would
uh,
be wrong with saying, I'm uncomfortable right now because I haven't done this for so long?
nothing's wrong with it. I mean, I feel like people are rewarded for vulnerability. When I was doing my research project, one of the stories involved a woman asking her friends to cuddle with her, like kind of a group snuggling kind of thing. And every person I read the story to commented on, wow, it was really brave and vulnerable for this woman to ask. And yeah, there's not going to be a right or wrong answer. And I think that if people do, I don't know if people say what what you're trying to, what you just suggested, I'm uncomfortable, I don't know what to do. That opens the door for the other person to allow themselves to be vulnerable and be like, oh, I don't know what to do either. Hey, let's talk about this and figure it out. That it's, it's all about this gap that's in between two people. And it's really hard to bridge. I mean, once you kind of get past it, it gets a little bit easier, but boy, that space that we've created between two or more human beings is, it's rough.
Yes.
It's very, very, it's a very confusing space, but doing it in a way that feels gentle and curious and vulnerable, and just recognizing that it's going to be uncharted territory for a lot of people opens the way to be able to do it and benefit from it.
Mm-hmm. So why is this topic that people need to think about? Why do people need to think about it, but they don't want to think about it? Really, and who does think about it until it comes up?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people think about it a lot and some people don't think about it. As one of my friends said, that it's kind of humanity's blind spot. And again, it's like we've been used to, for most of our human history, kind of taking it for granted. If you lived, for instance, 100 years ago, if you lived in a cold climate and you didn't have electricity, you would be sleeping in a bed with your entire family during the winter to keep from freezing to death. It's like we've needed it for survival so much, but our there's a lot of things I think about how we live that's in flux. And it's becoming, the quote unquote usual ways of getting touch is becoming less and less available to a lot of people. I mean, obviously people still marry and have children, but there's people who aren't getting those opportunities, who don't have those opportunities. There's some demographics where it's harder than for other people, but it's definitely out there. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. I appreciate your time. You have a book out?
I do. It's called Somebody Hold Me, The Single Person's Guide to Nurturing Human Touch. And it's available on all the platforms. You can get it in print as an audio book or also as a Kindle book kind of thing.
We'll put that link underneath your podcast.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And we'll put a link to your website too. So anybody that wants to get in touch with you can.
Yeah, like I had mentioned, I think before, I'm starting to do a little bit of coaching around this topic, like trying to help people get more touch in their lives. And it's been really cool what people, as a coach, if you let people come up with their own answers, it's been really interesting to
bet.
hear people's, different creative solutions for this. I really love it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you liked what you heard, please give us a 5-star rating or review on iTunes.